Revenge is a seductive idea. It whispers to you in the dark, telling you that if you could just even the score, if you could make them feel the pain they caused you, then maybe, just maybe, you'd find peace. But that's a lie, because revenge doesn't set you free. It chains you to the past. It binds you, thought by thought, action by action, to the very thing you despise. And before you realize it, the person who hurt you, who betrayed you, who left you broken, still controls you. Not because they are in your life, but because they occupy your mind. Think about what revenge requires. First, it demands that you hold on to your anger. You have to nurture it, keep it alive, feed it with memories of the pain. You replay the moment of betrayal over and over, dissecting every detail, imagining what you should have said, what you could have done differently. You think about what they deserve, about how you might deliver that justice yourself. And so, without realizing it, you build your life around the wound. The injury may have happened in the past, but because you refuse to let it go, it remains alive in the present. It festers. It defines you. And here's the tragedy. While you're consumed by these thoughts, the person who wronged you may not even remember. They may have moved on, continued with their life, completely unaware of the storm raging inside you. That's the cruel irony of revenge. It rarely punishes the person it's meant for. Instead, it punishes you. It robs you of peace, of clarity, of joy. It keeps you locked in a battle that only you are still fighting. Some people believe that revenge is justice. They say, if I don't make them suffer, they'll get away with it. But that isn't how justice works. True justice is impartial, balanced, a process that restores order. Revenge, on the other hand, is emotional. It's fueled by bitterness and hurt, not reason. And when you let emotions drive your actions, you rarely get the outcome you expect. You might think that making someone else suffer will heal your wounds, but it doesn't. Instead, it deepens them. You don't walk away feeling victorious. You walk away feeling empty. And worse, you've now made yourself into the very thing you despised. There's something deeper at play here. When you focus on revenge, you reinforce an identity of victimhood. You define yourself by the pain you've suffered rather than the strength you could build from it. You tell yourself a story where you are the injured party, the one who was wronged, the one who is owed something. But that's a dangerous place to stay, because it means your sense of power, your sense of meaning is dependent on someone else's downfall. And that's a fragile, self-destructive way to live. Imagine two paths. One is the path of revenge. You spend years resenting, plotting, waiting for your chance to strike. But in that time, what have you become? Someone controlled by anger. Someone whose growth was stunted by obsession. The other path is different. It's the path where you take all of that energy, all of that rage, and instead of wasting it on destruction, you use it to build something better. Yourself, your life, your future. You prove through your success, through your transformation, that what happened to you didn't break you, it forged you. This isn't about weakness. It's not about letting people walk all over you. It's about something much harder. Discipline, strength, mastery over yourself. It takes real power to let go of revenge, because it means confronting your pain and deciding that it will not dictate your future. It means recognizing that justice, real justice, is not yours to deliver through acts of destruction, but through acts of self-creation. The truth is, the past only has the power you give it. The more you feed it, the more it consumes you. The more you let it define you, the more you stay stuck in a place that no longer exists. But if you choose to move forward, if you choose to take responsibility for your own healing, you strip the past of its control. You take back your life. That's the coldest revenge. Not rage, not retaliation, but freedom. The ability to walk away untouched, untangled, and undefeated, because the moment you stop seeking revenge is the moment you truly win. The desire for revenge is one of the most primal instincts a person can experience. It emerges from a deep sense of injustice, a feeling that something has been taken from you, your dignity, your trust, your peace. When someone wrongs you, especially when it's intentional, the immediate reaction is often rage. The mind starts to spin stories of retribution, of making them suffer as they made you suffer. The temptation to act on those thoughts can be overwhelming. But this moment, this internal struggle between the impulse for revenge and the choice to rise above it, is a test of character. It reveals who you truly are and what kind of person you are willing to become. Revenge is easy, it is reactionary, it does not require thought, discipline, or wisdom. It is simply an emotional response to pain, an attempt to balance the scales by inflicting suffering in return. But the question that must be asked is, does revenge make you stronger or does it make you weaker? Does it build you up or does it drag you down to the same level as the one who wronged you? The answer to these questions determines whether you are truly in control of yourself or if you are a slave to your emotions. A person of weak character gives in to revenge without question. They allow their emotions to dictate their actions. They see themselves as the center of the universe, believing that their pain justifies whatever response they choose. But a person of strong character pauses. They reflect. They consider the consequences, not just for the one who wronged them, but for themselves. They ask, what kind of person do I want to be? And they recognize that the pursuit of vengeance often leads to regret, not satisfaction. Resisting revenge requires incredible self-discipline. It is difficult to suppress the urge to strike back, to walk away when every fiber of your being screams for payback. But discipline is what separates the weak from the strong. A disciplined person is not controlled by their emotions. They control their emotions. They do not allow temporary anger to dictate the course of their life. They understand that giving in to revenge means surrendering their power to the person who hurt them. Instead of taking control of their own destiny, they allow someone else's wrongdoing to define their next move. One of the greatest tests of character is whether you can transform pain into strength rather than destruction. When you choose revenge, you are allowing yourself to be shaped by bitterness. You are reinforcing the idea that your identity is wrapped up in the harm done to you. But when you resist, when you take that same energy and redirect it toward personal growth, you become something more than just a person who is wrong. You become a person who overcame. You become someone who turned suffering into wisdom, betrayal into resilience. There is also a level of humility in resisting revenge. It requires accepting that you do not control the universe, that justice is not always yours to deliver, and that sometimes the best response to wrongdoing is patience. Time has a way of dealing with people who act in bad faith. Those who manipulate, lie, and harm others often create their own downfall. They live in a world of deception and instability, and their actions inevitably come back to haunt them. A person of strong character understands this and chooses to walk away, knowing that their energy is better spent on building their own future than on tearing someone else down. Perhaps the greatest test of character in the face of revenge is whether you can find meaning in your suffering. Pain is a teacher, and every betrayal, every wound, every act of cruelty you endure is an opportunity to learn about yourself, about others, about the world. If you allow it, pain can deepen your understanding of human nature, making you wiser, more compassionate, and more resilient. But if you choose revenge, you stop learning. You close yourself off to the possibility of growth and instead become consumed by the cycle of destruction. There is power in restraint. There is dignity in self-control. And there is something profoundly admirable about a person who can look pain in the face and refuse to let it turn them into something they're not. The easy road is to seek revenge. The hard road, the road that demands strength, wisdom, and true character, is to rise above it, to let go, to move forward without being shackled to the past. That is the real test. And passing it is what separates those who are ruled by their emotions from those who rule themselves. When someone wrongs you, the natural response is to seek justice or worse, revenge. You want to make them feel the same pain they inflicted on you. You want them to regret what they did, to understand the damage they caused. This impulse is deeply ingrained in human nature. It's an emotional reaction that arises from a sense of injustice, a desire to restore balance. But the problem with revenge is that it keeps you trapped in the very pain you wish to escape. It keeps your focus on the past, on the one who wronged you, rather than on your own growth and future. The best response, the most powerful response, is not to seek retribution, but to transform yourself. Not because the other person deserves your forgiveness, not because you are weak or passive, but because you refuse to let their actions define you. When you dedicate yourself to self-transformation, you take back control. You shift your energy away from destruction and into creation. You build something greater out of the pain you experience. You turn suffering into strength, betrayal into wisdom, and injustice into motivation. Self-transformation is the ultimate form of victory. Imagine two possible responses to being wronged. One person lets their anger consume them. They become bitter, obsessed with making the other person suffer. Their thoughts are poisoned by resentment, their actions dictated by vengeance. And what happens? They waste months, years, sometimes even their entire lives focused on the past. The other person may not even care. The wrongdoer may have already moved on, completely unaffected, while the person seeking revenge remains emotionally shackled, defined by their pain. Now imagine another response. Instead of becoming consumed by bitterness, the person takes all that energy, all that anger, and channels it into something meaningful. They push themselves to grow, to become stronger, to build a life so full and rich that the past loses its grip on them. They don't just survive what happened to them, they use it as fuel to become someone better. They prove through their success and transformation that they are greater than the harm that was done to them. That is true power. Self-transformation is difficult. It requires discipline. It demands that you face yourself honestly and ask hard questions. How can I use this experience to grow? What weaknesses did it expose in me? How can I ensure that I emerge from this situation stronger rather than broken? These are not easy questions to answer. They require humility. They require the willingness to let go of the need for immediate gratification and instead invest in long-term growth. The path of transformation also requires patience. Growth does not happen overnight. Healing does not happen instantly. There will be days when the anger returns, when the pain resurfaces, when you feel like giving into bitterness. But every time you choose to move forward instead of looking back, you reclaim a little more of your power. Every time you choose to focus on your future rather than your past, you break another chain that ties you to what happened. One of the greatest aspects of self-transformation is that it turns your suffering into a source of wisdom and strength. People who have never experienced hardship, who have never faced betrayal or pain, often lack depth. They don't understand resilience because they've never had to develop it. But those who have suffered and emerged stronger possess something invaluable, perspective. They know what it means to endure. They know how to rebuild. And most importantly, they know that the best revenge isn't hurting someone else. It's proving that you were never truly defeated. The world is full of people who let pain turn them into something bitter and small. But there is another way. You can let pain refine you instead of destroy you. You can take what was meant to break you and use it to build something greater. You can become someone who inspires others, not because your life was easy, but because you refuse to let hardship define you. This is not about ignoring injustice. It is not about pretending that what happened to you is acceptable. It is about deciding that your life is too valuable to waste on resentment. It is about choosing to invest in yourself rather than in your anger. It is about proving through your own transformation that the person who hurt you ultimately had no real power over you. The best response is not to sink to the level of those who harmed you. The best response is to rise so far above them that they become insignificant in the vastness of your success, your growth, your strength. The best response is self-transformation. And if you can commit to that, you will realize that the greatest power you will ever have is the ability to become better than you were yesterday, no matter what anyone else has done to you. When you experience betrayal, loss, or injustice, your mind instinctively seeks an outlet for the pain. You might dwell on the past, replaying the events over and over, analyzing every detail and imagining different scenarios where you finally get the upper hand. You might even feel that the only way to heal is to even the score, to make the person who wronged you suffer just as you have. But the truth is, this kind of thinking does nothing but drain your energy and keep you stuck in a cycle of negativity. The time, effort, and emotion you invest in resentment could be spent on something far more productive, your own growth. Every moment you spend thinking about revenge or dwelling on past wounds is a moment you are not spending building yourself into the person you want to be. Energy is a finite resource. You wake up each day with only so much mental, emotional, and physical energy to spend. The question is, where will you invest it? Will you pour it into bitterness, feeding your anger, replaying the past, or will you channel it into something meaningful, something that benefits you, something that moves your life forward? People often believe that revenge will bring them closure, that by making the other person suffer, they will somehow feel whole again. But that's an illusion. Revenge does not heal wounds, it deepens them. It keeps you emotionally attached to the person who hurt you. It keeps you looking backward instead of forward. It doesn't free you, it chains you to the past. True healing comes from growth, from taking the pain and using it as fuel to become wiser, stronger, and more capable. Growth is the most powerful response to adversity because it transforms suffering into something valuable. Instead of allowing pain to diminish you, you use it to evolve. You take the lessons from your hardships and apply them to your future. You recognize where you were vulnerable and develop resilience. You acknowledge what was broken and rebuild it stronger. Every challenge, every betrayal, every disappointment can either destroy you or refine you. And the difference lies in where you choose to direct your energy. Consider the most successful, resilient people in history. They did not become great by seeking revenge on those who doubted or wronged them. They became great by focusing on what they could control, their own actions, their own mindset, their own growth. They refused to waste time on bitterness because they understood that success, mastery, and fulfillment are far more satisfying than revenge could ever be. They knew that while anger burns bright, it burns out quickly, leaving nothing but ashes. But growth is sustainable. It builds upon itself, layer by layer, creating something solid, something enduring. This is not to say that injustice should be ignored or that you should simply forget what happened to you. It's about recognizing that your energy is too valuable to be spent on things that do not serve you. Holding on to resentment does not punish the other person, it punishes you. While you are caught in a cycle of anger and retaliation, they may have already moved on, living their life unaffected by your suffering. Why give them that power? Why allow them to take any more of your time, your thoughts, your emotions? Instead, reclaim that energy and invest it in something that benefits you. Growth takes many forms. It can mean focusing on your career, developing new skills, deepening your relationships, or working on your physical and mental well-being. It could mean setting new goals and pushing yourself to achieve them. It could mean proving not to others, but to yourself, that you are capable of overcoming anything. When you shift your energy toward growth, you turn your pain into power. You show yourself that no matter what has happened, you still have control over your future. One of the most liberating realizations in life is that you are not obligated to carry the weight of your past forever. You have the power to let go, to move forward, and to use every experience, good or bad, as a stepping stone toward becoming the best version of yourself. The past cannot be changed. The people who wronged you may never apologize. The situations that hurt you may never be undone, but none of that determines your future. What determines your future is where you choose to place your energy. Imagine a life where instead of being consumed by negativity, you are consumed by progress, where your thoughts are not dominated by resentment, but by ambition and purpose, where you wake up every day not thinking about what was done to you, but about what you are building for yourself. That is the life of someone who chooses growth over revenge. That is the life of someone who refuses to be defined by their pain. Your energy is precious. Spend it wisely. Invest it in something that elevates you, because at the end of the day, the best response to those who tried to break you is to rise so far above them that they become irrelevant. Not because you ignored the pain, but because you used it to build something so much greater. Revenge is one of the most deceptive emotions a person can experience. In the moment, it feels justified, even necessary. When someone wrongs you, betrays you, humiliates you, causes you pain, it's natural to want to strike back. You tell yourself that making them suffer will restore balance, that it will ease your pain. You imagine the satisfaction of seeing them regret what they did, of knowing they felt the same kind of hurt you endured. But revenge is rarely as satisfying as it seems in the heat of the moment. More often than not, it leads to regret. The first reason revenge often leads to regret is that it does not bring the peace people expect. You may believe that making the other person suffer will give you closure, but once you carry out your revenge, you may realize that nothing inside you has changed. The betrayal still happened. The pain is still real. Hurting someone else does not erase what was done to you. It simply adds another layer of consequences now tied to your own action. You may feel a temporary sense of power, but once that fades, you're left with the realization that you have not actually healed. Revenge also has a way of escalating beyond what you originally intended. When you act out of anger, you are not thinking clearly. You may set out to inflict a small amount of harm, but once you cross that line, it becomes easy to keep going. What starts as a minor act of retaliation can spiral into something far more destructive, pulling you into a cycle of hostility. And as the situation escalates, you may find yourself doing things that under normal circumstances you would never have imagined yourself capable of. The further you go, the harder it is to turn back. There is also the reality that revenge can have unintended consequences. When you act impulsively, you do not always consider the full impact of your actions. In your desire to hurt someone else, you may end up damaging your own reputation, your relationships, or even your future. A single act of revenge done in anger can have long-term repercussions. You might lose the respect of those around you. You might face real-world consequences, legal trouble, financial loss, or social alienation. And worst of all, you may wake up one day and realize that in trying to punish someone else, you have only hurt yourself. Beyond the practical consequences, revenge changes who you are. It forces you to act in ways that go against your higher values. It turns you into the very thing you resented in the first place. If someone hurt you by being dishonest, manipulative, or cruel, and you respond with deception or cruelty of your own, you have allowed their actions to shape you into something less than what you were. Instead of rising above the situation, you become trapped in it, allowing it to define your character. And the moment you realize that you have compromised your own principles for the sake of revenge, regret is inevitable. Regret also comes from wasted time and energy. When you are focused on getting back at someone, you are not focused on your own growth. You are not improving your life, building your future, or working towards something meaningful. Instead, you are stuck in the past, reliving the hurt over and over again, keeping yourself tied to a person who has already taken enough from you. Time spent plotting revenge is time that could have been spent building something better for yourself. And when you finally step back and see all the opportunities you missed while you were consumed by anger, regret is unavoidable. Perhaps the deepest regret comes when you realize that revenge has not only failed to heal your pain, but has actually deepened it. There is a heaviness that comes with hurting others, even when you feel justified. You might think you will feel satisfaction, but instead you may feel emptiness. You may look in the mirror and see someone unrecognizable, someone driven by bitterness rather than strength. And at that moment, you may come to understand that the real power was never in revenge. It was in letting go, in moving forward, in refusing to let someone else's wrongdoing dictate the course of your life. Revenge offers an illusion of control. It makes you believe that by retaliating, you are taking back power. But true power lies in self-mastery. It lies in choosing to focus on your own growth rather than on destruction. It lies in proving, not to others, but to yourself, that you are strong enough to move forward without being consumed by the past. The reality is you cannot undo the harm that was done to you, but you can choose whether you let it define you. You can choose whether to remain trapped in the cycle of pain or whether to rise above it. And in the end, the people who seek revenge often find themselves looking back, not with satisfaction, but with deep regret, wishing they had chosen healing over hatred, growth over bitterness, and peace over revenge. When someone wrongs you, the instinctive reaction is to seek justice, to make sure they suffer consequences for their actions. You may feel that life is unfair, that people get away with betrayal, cruelty, or dishonesty without facing the punishment they deserve. The temptation to take justice into your own hands can be overwhelming, but the truth is, reality has a way of balancing itself out. People who act with malice, dishonesty, or selfishness often create their own downfall. They may seem to succeed for a while, but eventually their actions catch up with them. Reality takes care of justice, often in ways far more fitting than anything you could orchestrate yourself. Every action has consequences, whether visible or invisible. People who lie and manipulate may appear to get ahead in the short term, but they damage their own credibility. Over time, they lose the trust of those around them. People who betray others may think they have won, but they set themselves up for a life of instability and shallow relationships. Those who harm others eventually find themselves isolated, surrounded only by people as untrustworthy as they are. Reality ensures that those who take shortcuts, exploit others, or act without integrity eventually pay a price, not because someone enforces it, but because the way they live naturally leads to destruction. One of the greatest illusions people believe is that injustice goes unpunished. It may seem that way in the moment, especially when you see people who behave selfishly yet appear to succeed. But reality is patient. Just because consequences do not arrive immediately does not mean they are not coming. A person who deceives others must continue lying to maintain their illusion. A person who builds their success on corruption must constantly watch their back. The stress, paranoia, and emptiness that come with such a life are their own form of punishment. They may have material success, but they lack real peace, real trust, and real fulfillment. When you try to take justice into your own hands, you become entangled in the same negativity that harmed you in the first place. You keep your focus on the one who wronged you instead of on your own growth. You allow them to take even more from you, not just the past pain, but your present energy and your future direction. But when you step back and allow reality to unfold as it will, you free yourself. You trust that people who act without integrity will ultimately face the weight of their own choices, and you turn your attention to building a life that is too rich and meaningful to be dragged down by bitterness. There is also wisdom in recognizing that life operates with a kind of balance that we do not always see immediately. The pain someone causes will eventually return to them, often in ways they never expected. Sometimes it is through losing what they once took for granted. Sometimes it is through facing the same kind of betrayal they once inflicted on others. And sometimes it is through the simple realization, perhaps too late, that their choices have left them alone, unfulfilled, and deeply unsatisfied with the life they built. Reality does not forget. It does not require your involvement to set things right. It may not happen on your timeline or in the way you imagine, but justice is embedded in the structure of life itself. Those who live with honesty, discipline, and integrity may face hardships, but they build something lasting. Those who take shortcuts and hurt others may seem to advance quickly, but their foundation is weak and eventually it crumbles. This is why the best response to injustice is not revenge, but self-transformation. Instead of becoming consumed with the desire to punish someone else, focus on making your own life better. Instead of waiting for them to fail, invest in your own success. The greatest revenge, if it can even be called that, is not to destroy someone else, but to rise so far above them that their actions become irrelevant. When you focus on yourself, you prove that their wrongdoing had no real power over you, that you are too strong, too determined, and too focused on your own growth to be held back by their negativity. Justice is not always immediate, and it is not always visible, but it is real. People carry the weight of their own actions, whether they show it or not. The best thing you can do is trust that reality will take care of justice in its own time, while you focus on creating a life so full and meaningful that you no longer need to look back.